Here we are. Okay, so this is Group F, Week 7, Monday. Yay.
Yay! Monday night party night. Missed you guys last week.
Yeah, it was just me and Rayanne.
No, last week we didn't have nothing.
Nothing.
You're thinking 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, right, I guess. I was trying to think of what last. I was like, wait, what?
Sorry. Are you
Oh,
guys having leftover turkey?
I just had a little potato.
yeah,
That's all
our
I-
family, there's
yeah,
a lot more potato leftovers than turkey leftovers.
Oh,
yeah.
that's disappointing.
Whatever.
Yeah. All right, so today we are going to talk about participatory culture and focusing on the Jenkins article. There was a long reading and then he had a little video. So first, we're just kind of supposed to discuss how participatory culture can and will or might impact our pedagogy, the curriculum, and educational practices within the classroom.
I really honestly did not get anything on the participatory culture.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Like I read that, like it was a long read, that 72 page thing, and I got no idea still after reading that what this is. I'm literally trying to read the definition of it here just to try to get myself a little bit of a understanding, but
Well, I think the kind of, and I got a little bit of this from his YouTube video where Jenkins spoke, the old bearded man. And I think the concept is more about, not really focusing on the individual, but, focusing on how we work with others, but also how we work with others on a larger scale. So not just within the classrooms, but also like globally or nationally, and how obviously this idea of participatory culture is getting bigger and growing because of our access to technology, the internet, how we can connect like we are doing right now. We're not all physically together, but we can, still participate collectively. So some things I pulled from near the beginning of the article, I kind of had to pry them from some of the paragraphs. But, and again, how they exactly touch on pedagogy, curriculum, and practices, we can kind of maybe talk about, but a little bit about how teaching technology cannot just be done within in isolation, how it needs to happen by an interrelationship among like all different communication technologies, which I thought is important, right? It needs to be like fully integrated. So I guess in terms of our pedagogical approach, us as educators need to infuse tech and this idea of networking on a daily basis in everything we do, not just like today's computer class, right? I think some of us reflected on how we had computer class in the past and we go to the computer lab, but now we're supposed to just do this, all the time. And then I talked a little bit about there being a need for this increase of tech and access to it, so that students have opportunities to participate with their cultural competencies and their social skills. And I really honed in on this when it talked about moving from this individual expression to a community involvement. So I guess that's kind of a way, even though we are a community within our classroom, I think like preparing our students to be global citizens and be participating community members within like a national and international scale, and not just like, hi, here's Rayanne and I discussing this, one-on-one in person, but how we can do it through like online platforms, through, our blog posts, through commenting on people's things, through our YouTube video posts, like all these different ways. But that takes still a level of social skills, but it's kind of a different type of social skill. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah. And then at the end, it talked about like how this, we can't just, like all these skills, we can teach them by building on the skills we already teach. And, you know, Jenkins, I think, thinks that it can be done quite seamlessly if we put our brains to it. So, and there doesn't need to be such like a separation between the two. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember him talking about in his video there saying that his hosting his classes on YouTube gives him the opportunity to reach not just students at other schools, but people that like maybe just want to learn about the culture itself instead of like being in university, but people just want to just kind of get a better understanding of it.
Yeah. It creates a lot better of a broader spectrum of people who can learn about it, and people, like, especially people who want to learn about it, they have access, easy access, especially with YouTube. Anything's on YouTube. So they have easy access to learn about stuff like that. And especially, like, let's say it's the other side of the country and someone like is doing an assignment and they want to learn about, I don't know, something or a class that's like in Canada. It would be very beneficial, I think, especially using YouTube to post classes like that, because that opens up a lot of opportunities for a lot of people.
Well, and I think the idea too is like, there's a lot of argument nowadays, and I think this class kind of raises a bunch of them, is there a point for a curriculum? Because technically we can Google it. And that's so true, right? If I want to know the square root of something, I can Google it. If any answer to anything in the world, I can find it at the tip of my fingers by typing it into a search engine. And then if I want to have a deeper understanding of it, I can watch somebody's lecture that they posted who's a profound researcher in the area on YouTube. I can access journal article. I can access how-to videos on how to do anything I want. So I think there really is a strong question to be asked. What should we be teaching and how should we be teaching it? Is the basic math classes and science classes, are these necessary when we have access to all this technology, right, to do it for us? So I think that it's fair to be said that with this idea of the encroachment of technology and having this connection to people on a global scale, we need to rethink what our curriculum contains. And we saw this a lot, I think about 4 weeks ago when we looked at Nova Scotia and New Brunswick's curriculum and how they infused tech and specific things within that, as well as I think our curriculum's behind, especially in Saskatchewan, right? It's not up to date. And I think it's always going to be behind if we're not as on top of it as tech is. But tech is constantly, moving forward.
Mm. I think Jenkins brought it up pretty good in that little video too of a lot of us came from that standard kind of classroom setting where it's textbook, learn how to do it, memorize it, no media and all that stuff. And I think that might be the one, I don't know if it is, but the thing that might be holding back Saskatchewan's curriculum is a lot of people that are in power of that came from that. Whereas now, like he said, we're trying to move into where people have media all the time. They're on social media all the time. They're on their phones. They're on tech. They learn differently. They have different languages.
Yeah.
Just their phone or playing video games.
Yeah, and also how he mentioned in the video how the students are doing it anyway, and they're doing it by themselves. So why shouldn't we be educated and be able to help them and inform them of dangers of certain websites, certain social media? I think that was a very key point in his video that really stuck with me, because it's so true. They're doing it outside of school. Why is it an issue if we make it a safe learning tool?
Mm-hmm. Well, you think about it, health. In our health curriculum, we teach road safety. We teach hygiene. We teach things about being safe human beings in our world, right? But they're more, I think, like person to world, right? It's not person to tech, but a huge part about our safety and our ability to connect to people is now like 50% technology. There's this concept that, you know, I have my in-person identity, but I also have my digital identity. And for children, especially growing up today, those identities are both equally important, right? And they are separate to some extent, because a child can feel more comfortable being somebody else online than they may be in person, because they're shy, introverted, right? And we shouldn't limit them.
Yeah, like even if you think, like, this is a bad example, but it's an example, like even of like cyberbullies. Like a lot of cyberbullies, that's all they are. They bully people online because they don't have to look at that person. They don't have to see that person cry when these things are being said about them. So they're a whole different person online because they can hide. They can hide behind a screen, whereas they're probably a totally different person in real life and in class. Like, I'm sure they're still like a bully, but they're probably not as extensive of a bully.
Well, you can, like you said, you can, when you can hide behind something, it's like a barrier, it's a wall, it's a form of protection. So just as much as we need to teach our children how to be safe through social media, we need to also, you know, teach them how to be a good person on social media and to not cyberbully. And there needs to be consequences. If we're going to say that there's going to be consequences to these actions when you're doing them face to face, there needs to be consequences to them through a digital platform. And I think he's so right. We need to address these things within our classroom because this is the world they're going into. And I like, Sydney, how you brought up, they're doing it anyways. And one thing I read in the article, because I kind of got mistaken, is I went to look at the skills, the next question, and I ended up reading the paragraphs that were a plethora of examples of what everyday people have done and what they've created, but not necessarily having these skills yet. So it talked about the guy who made clay animation and now works for DreamWorks, and the guy who was publishing websites and creating web browsers and using computer programming skills, and he created Firefox. And so all these different things that we shouldn't have to figure out on our own, that we should be teaching kids in school to be prepared. Like, these are the jobs of today and beyond, right? Like, who knows what the jobs of tomorrow are even going to look like. But if we're just teaching students like we taught them 20 years ago, even, you know, we're not benefiting them for tomorrow. We're not equipping them with these new skills that he goes on to discuss.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, there comes to be some line and a certain point where you have to realize, like, our world is constantly changing and it's constantly moving forward in technology. Like, they're working on flying cars right now. We're not that far away from other crazy stuff. So I think that our education system has to be flexible and has to change with that, because our world's going to change. And it sucks that whatever worked 20 years ago in teaching doesn't work today. Like, it really sucks, but that's the realization of it, because our world is constantly changing.
I know an example of this too, like, happened today. I mentioned to my one classmate that we were going to be having our Zoom meeting, our video conference. And she was like, yeah, I tried to suggest that my group Skype the other day, and everyone like kiboshed it. And I was very quick to actually say, because I have experienced this Zoom and I understand it and I know how to use it, which didn't take that long, but because I'm equipped with this ability now and this knowledge, how quick I was to say, well, actually, it's pretty cool because we don't have to physically be together, even though we are tonight, but like, we don't have to be together. And I said, if we had to work on something like a group project, we could pull up what's called a Google Doc now, a living document that we could all work on together simultaneously, not have to share through emails, not have to handwrite. Like, I was just kind of like, wow, this is really easy, right? You know, none of us had to get into our cars and come to the university. Like, I happen to be here, Rayanne as well, but like both Dryden and Sydney, you look like you're in the comfort of your homes to some extent. You know, one of you could even not be in Regina. I don't know, right? Like, and there's also a level of comfortability, but also protection, right? Like, I don't need to know where you guys are. I don't even need to, you know, physically see you or touch you, but yet we can still have this exchange of knowledge and education. But if we don't do it, and if we don't educate ourselves and our students about it, they're going to say the same thing. I don't really understand how Skype works. No thanks.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we should teach them. I'm like, then then that can help you so much in our continuously changing world. And I want to go back to your like Google Docs comment, because I want to like say, even like in university right now, I have a night class, and we're doing an assignment, and me and my two partners are going to be using Google Slides, so that we can all do our own information at the exact same time. We can all see like what is being put on it, and we can all comment on it. And I think that's a really awesome thing, because realistically, it's a night class. I only see those people once a week for 3 hours, and that's it.
Yeah.
So how are we supposed to get together realistically with our busy schedules? They're all different because we're all in different like majors and minors. So that's it.
No, and I completely agree, because the university is changing too, right? Like, they're offering night classes and weekend classes and online classes. Like, the four of us are in different majors and have totally different schedules. The four of us to have to like find a time where we could physically be together. This was hard enough to find a time where we could
all meet
over like technology, right? And it allows somebody like myself at like an older age to, you know, work and have outside life and things going on, and not have to dedicate my 9 to 5 to class like I did in high school, right? You know, it's a different, it allows for this flexibility and everything. But I think that a part of what Jenkins talked about in his video, and then goes on in his article to kind of specify a bit more about these skills, is that we need to teach these new skills, as he calls them, so that our students can be, you know, prepared to live this way. And they won't say, no, let's all just still trying to find a time where we can physically meet at the university, right? Like, think about our climate when it's going to snowstorm maybe tomorrow. And, you know, like, there's really no excuse anymore, right? Like,
No. It's like, we might as well like face the facts, even though I hate it. I don't like technology at all. But we have to face the facts that we have all these amazing resources like Zoom and Skype and Google Docs. I'm like, why don't we take more advantage of that? I'm like, we have it. It's free. Like, why wouldn't we want to? And I think everybody just has to come to a realization, no matter how much you hate technology, you come to a realization that you just got to go with it, because that's our world.
Well, and I don't think it disqualifies some of the things that we teach in school. You know, you do need to learn how to read and write and, you know, do basic math. Like, there's room for these things. There's room for experiential learning through science experiments. There is importance of understanding history. The way we teach these things and the examples we use can be done differently through technology and through infusing it in our daily lives and allowing students to have the opportunity and choice to have a blog post. Because if they go to a job interview, I even know for myself, I have a portfolio to go to an interview as a teacher one day, and it's in a binder right now. But I'm also have a digital e-portfolio that is a blog page, right? Because like, and when you go for a job interview, the first thing they do is Google you. What's your resume on a piece of paper doesn't mean anything as much anymore, right? Like, we're living in this world where, like, again, we need to, like Jenkins said, and this was a good point, you know, they're using it anyways. We need to teach them to not post things that are going to maybe not get them a job in the future, because they put that slandering post about on Facebook about the community members of a minority group because they were angry as they were a 14-year-old kid, right?
Yeah.
Well,
that comes up a lot right now, even with some pro athletes that are getting brought up, like something they tweeted about 7 years ago when they were 12 or 13, and they're gonna have to pay the consequences for that now, and kind of say, like, oh, I was young, dumb, and didn't mean anything by it, but like still people are questioning you about what you did.
Yeah, well, and you post something, it's there forever, right?
Yeah.
Like the internet does not erase itself. Yeah. I know this was like probably over a decade ago, we had a governor general, the one who like connects to the queen in the country, and they were bringing up some stuff. But when she was in her 20s, there was a news article that she participated in a weed smoking study, right? But they could hold her to it because they found this newspaper clipping from like the 60s. Well, we live in a world today where you can find anything about anybody like that, and there is nowhere to hide behind. Well, somebody said that they saw you smoking at a party, right? I'm not saying we're posting that stuff, but we are digital beings as much as we are private beings now. And yeah, so I totally agree that we need to not ignore the fact. So I think it kind of comes to like this last question of like, what are the digital practices that young people are engaging in online, and how can we integrate these practices into the classroom to support student learning?
Well, I think like it even goes with what we were saying. Like I know my girlfriend's dad, when he's a manager at a kind of an industrial place, and when he hires people, the first thing he does is type in their Google or their Facebook to see like what comes up on them and all that stuff. So I think like the digital practices that we kind of need to teach is as we've been saying, like the consequences that can happen for such a small, simple action, or even the little bit of classroom work I've had in a grade 8 class. It was in a grade 8 guys health class. They brought a police officer in to, like, I don't know if it was to scare the kids in a way, but kind of show them like the serious consequences of what can happen with Snapchat and, sending inappropriate pictures and
they did
taking a screenshot of it and showing it to other people, like what the serious harm of, like, you might think that is something so small and you can't comprehend it as much then, but the consequences for that can just be horrific for not just you, but for somebody else, right?
Yeah. So I think you're saying too, like we can use these social media platforms as a way to educate students about like safety. I think too, like on the flip side, you can teach what privacy settings are, how to set them. Mm-hmm. But also, even if you have them set to their highest, and I'm friends with you guys on Facebook, and you guys don't like me because I missed a group meeting, you guys could grab something that you have access to because you're my friend that the general public doesn't, and you could use it against me somehow, right? Like it's that 6 degrees of separation that, we can, even though if you have your privacy settings and they're important, there's still ways for people to find things about you. So what should you post? What shouldn't you post? What I posted in my early 20s, I thought was like all, peachy keen, and now I'm going to be an educator. And I'm like, I guess all those photos with liquor in them and being at the bar aren't something I should have anymore. They're good memories and I can, hide them or save them onto my desktop or something. But if somebody goes and finds me on social media and I'm friends with a friend of the principal of the school that I'm going to teach at, and she sees that, even though it's, watermarked 2007, like that still could have adverse consequences for me if that's something they're not into. Or they'd be like, sweet, this girl looks like she used to love Yag bombs. I love them too. Let's go. Right. So I think that's a good point to bring up. And I think too, like another thing is all these like things around like video creating, like we have to do for this class, and like, creating YouTubes or creating blogs and websites are just great tools that we can use as forms of assessment, right? Instead of doing a paper book report, let's do it through a blog, or let's do it through a video presentation. Maybe I'm scared to get in front of the group, but I'm a really good personality through my computer. I can turn it on, I can have good, sound and language and be free in front of my tech versus in front of a crowd of 30 people, right? And that student gets these learnings, but then also gets still a good mark for being a great presenter if we're looking at those skills.
Yeah.
I think we can use them like as an example too. My uncle's a teacher, and he uses his kind of Twitter as an example for his kids on like kind of how to be safe on it and like how to use that and using it like as you said in his example, like he says, you know, like what I post on there affects my job. Like right now, like what I post on there can affect my job, and kind of shows them like, you know, like it's not like he doesn't use it ever, but he's just like, you know, I can post this kind of stuff and this is safe. Like I like sports and I can talk about it on there or kind of do that stuff. But there's certain things that like might seem harmless that I can't like that post or retweet it or tweet at it or something like that, right?
Yeah. Well, and I know I've learned, and again, I never would have thought, but that Twitter is actually a great research platform.
Yeah.
Because of this thing called a hashtag. People use them for all sorts of things, but you could search hashtag EdTech, and you could find all these people who are tweeting about educational technology, and I've got access to blogs and websites and school divisions and research documents that, you know, like can open all these doors, right? You know, I could put like ed math or, you know, just different things in there, and then I can connect with these people, and I can create a professional learning network that is also not just between my student colleagues and my profs and the people I interact with, but on a global scale. Yeah. And I can learn from them, and they can retweet me and be like, oh, this girl had a really cool idea, right? And, you know, we can kind of grow and learn from one another through something that maybe that wasn't its intention or purpose, but yet we can use it to our benefit, right? I think that's another important thing to teach kids, to support their learning. So
yeah, I think even to like Jenkins was trying to like say like that there needs to be a focus in the classroom that we should be educating on this, like that we should be teaching students and kids how to use this stuff, not to be afraid of it, but how to use it properly and the benefits that it can give you, like Google Docs or Twitter, like you said, like the use of a hashtag, like what that can happen. Or a lot of people even they put polls on Twitter for a large amount of people to kind of do a mass survey or something like that. So I mean, like there's a lot of tools that you could use at that, and I think getting to kids younger, I mean, obviously there's a limit, but getting to them at a young enough age where like you can kind of slowly teach them, and before they get into high school, and you know, with all of the already pressures that go on within a setting like that, and you come across something like Snapchat or Twitter, and all of a sudden a huge life-altering, what you think is a huge life-altering event happens with a picture or a tweet or a Facebook post or something like that.
Some of those can be life-altering, though. There's
for sure,
in my high school who committed suicide over one.
Yeah. And that's another, I think, way that we can educate, right? We can educate that these things happen to people next door, and that these things have grave consequences. And I think this is where, too, instead of a part of it is like we need to revamp the whole curriculum, how we can take our already curriculum, which talks about bullying, you know, in our health, and, you know, connecting to others on a social scale and treating each other right, and all these things, and suicide prevention and mental health. Like these are things within our curriculum right now that we teach from like kindergarten and up. Yes. At a very low level. And we don't necessarily have to change the curriculum, but as educators, we can make the decision on teaching it through a way that's realistic and that the children can connect to, but then also touches on digital literacies, you know, being a digital, you know, citizen, all this stuff in a way that, you know, we don't have to really overthink it too much, right? So I think there's like that to be said too. I know I said like, oh, our curriculum needs to catch up, but I think as educators, our practices need to change. We need to be more creative, and we need to step out of our comfort zones. And that's why, to me, like a class like this should be mandatory, because if we're the ones going to like shape the people of tomorrow, who are children who are probably already coding and can do things with technology beyond all of our wildest dreams, because they've lived and breathed it, right? Like I was the kid in high school who had to put the DVD in for mom and dad before I went out so they could watch a movie, because I knew how to do it better, you know, then, you know, we can't do our kids a disservice and not even scratch the surface on things they're already doing.
I don't think of anything else.
Yeah, I had a train of thought and completely
I know.
lost it.
I was like, I had something.
Sorry, guys.
Where did it go?
Oh,
But our curriculum does need to be updated. And
Yeah.
it needs to be updated in a way that takes into account technology.
Yes, because
There are honestly some of our curriculum documents are the typewriter typed up, scanned crookedly half sideways
Yeah.
on the computer.
yeah.
Like that's some of the curriculum we're working with.
Well, and I think the argument too is that, okay, even though like we have this class and we're like now armed as these future educators to bring technology to the forefront and we understand the importance of it, if we didn't have this class and it's not written in black and white in the document we're supposed to follow, we're probably not going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why that Nova Scotia, New Brunswick documents were so refreshing, because it just stated it right there in that black text that this is how you can teach this, and this is the tech you can use, and this is the verb, this is the vocab you should be using. And so it made it so much easier than having to like do it on our own, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with you that.
Yeah.
I think that like right now, oh, go ahead.
Okay. And I also think that like in the classroom when you want to let students use technology, I say this all the time and I will die saying it. I think there should be multiple different ways for students to choose, let's say, a list of 8 to 10 things of online something that they could do their production with or their project, so that, because everybody's different. Not everybody's going to want to use a PowerPoint. Not everybody's going to want to record a video of them saying it. You know what I mean? Like, I think there could be a lot of different options within limits, obviously.
Sydney, what year are you in?
I'm in first.
First, the word you're looking for, and you're going to hear it nonstop third year, it's called differentiation.
Oh yeah, I've heard
It's
it.
a mouthful, but that is exactly it's exactly what you're talking about. And it is like the word, because that is exactly what they say. As educators, we can't go in and say everyone's doing a book report. We need to look at our students as individuals. We need to give them options for the type of assignments they're going to do, the ways we're going to teach them it, and how the ways we're going to assess it. Right? So that is like the big word. So like, you know, your strategies need to be differentiated. Your assignments need to be differentiated. And then how you mark them needs to be differentiated. Because every kid, and I love how you're living and breathing by it, because that means that you're already on the right track as a year one student who hasn't gotten the differentiated textbook that you will get in 311, or whatever, you know. But anyways, so like that is it. That whole idea of like having students have options to be successful.
Well, like I just know, because like personally I've struggled my whole life with like I can't learn from certain teachers because I learn different than a lot of people. Like I don't even know how I learn. I should probably figure that out.
But you know, that's okay. You don't need to necessarily know, because they're also saying that children don't necessarily learn in one way. And by pegging them as like visual or auditory or kinesthetic learners at an early age does them a disservice, right? Because there's levels of learning that we use all time. But as an educator, as what we're becoming, you know, to go help the future little people or larger people, whatever phrase we go into, but that we cannot just say, I'm this teacher and you got to learn my way. We got to flip it.
I definitely think you should learn how to deal and teach for many different forms of learning, and you should be open to that. And I also think that within schools, there should be some way, I don't know how, but there should be some way for kids to find out how they learn. Because I've been struggling with it my whole life. I still don't know. I'd like to know at some point, but we'll get there. But I think it would have helped me a lot in high school to know how I learned. Because half the time I was just studying and I didn't know how to study, so I was just frantically studying, trying to memorize everything. Which not
well, and as educators, we need to take into account that our students aren't just numbers. You're just not number 6 in my class of 30. That you are Sydney, and you learn and this works best for you. You get success when you've done this, and you've had not so much success when you've done that. So therefore, I'm going to provide you with options, and I'm going to give you time. So it really, as an educator, we need to put in a lot more work than just
I was just going to say, like, so, like, I could suggest maybe these 3 things out of this list of 10 would be best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that you would probably find that easiest.
And a lot of it's going to be trial and error. Like, even as as learners, you know, you try it and you may have success with that, and then you got to try something else. Like, and it's not bad to learn other ways. Just because and I'm with you, not a big fan of technology, but learning how to make a YouTube video is not a bad thing to know, because then I can possibly teach it. Not like I'm going to go start a YouTube channel tomorrow, but, you know, like, it's a nice,
even if you have the basic knowledge, it's nice to have basic knowledge of little things everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't need to be able to tell you everything about the software on YouTube. Like, that's not realistic.
Well, if it's not going to be your job, if you're not the software engineer of YouTube, then you're fine, right?
Yeah.
But you've got to have some basic understanding. Like, I had to navigate the first time I had to convert our Zoom video and then convert it onto YouTube, because it's the first time I posted a YouTube video, right? So
I know, I was trying to figure it out too.
But through trial and error, and I think that's the beautiful thing with learning too, is you kind of excite yourself and you learn, oh, I could do that. I was able to follow these steps. I was able to do this. Even though I didn't like this, I did it, right? And there's a sense of success in that, and it's great. That's why it's important that we, you know, still expose children to all forms of learning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think like, just to get a little in, like for myself, I think it's more of a comfortability thing. Like, I found out that I learn best in like a geography 100 class where you sit in an auditorium and one teacher talks and you write. And I think that's just
you are blessed, man.
Well, it's just how like school was. Like, that's how school was for me. Like, we sat in a class, took notes. I took my own notes. You read off how you set up your own notes, not how somebody else does it, and then prepare in your own way for it. And, you know, I think for me, a lot of ed classes have shown that other people don't learn like that. And even this gets me way out of your comfort zone. Like, it's completely different.
Well, because this is all yourself.
Yeah.
It's you pretty much like reading and teaching yourself, and then we all come together and talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, like, another thing I've noticed, like, with that I've taken away kind of from this, like, and it goes with our curriculum, like, and the media, like, it seems like, you know, like, as a teacher, even with our curriculum the way it is, and if it stays the way it is, like, we're almost going to have to make chicken shit into chicken salad, right? Like, we have to take the curriculum for what it is and introduce the media where we feel like in health, like, we can introduce like how media is healthy for you, or how it'll help you in math or in other subjects. Like, that's really kind of been like the big takeaway that I've noticed, like, within this class itself, for sure.
Yeah. And you're right. Yes, it needs to change. Yes, we can be advocates for that change. But at the end of the day, if all we do is make excuses for what we're given, then we're not doing anybody any good.
No.
Especially if we know better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's a good way to wrap it up, considering we have a minute and like 5 seconds left.
Good job, team.
Good job.
Good job.
Okay.
I guess I'll talk to you Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just in class Wednesday, right? As a whole class. It's not the.
I think so. I was gonna say I haven't really looked at it.
I think we're normal this week.
Okay.
I think we're normal for a while.
Yeah, it's normal. I've said it. You're right. We'll all meet at 7 with the whole group, and we'll all be like, sweet Lord. Okay. Anyway.
Have a good one.
Bye.